Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. We're kicking off with a wild one. A man moves into his new home and gets a crash course in neighborhood politics when one resident decides he owns everyone's lawn. A few buckets of corn, some barking dogs, and one metal stake later, the cops have a new regular. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. He terrorized our street for years. One porch camera brought him down. I moved into my new house in January, excited to settle in and meet whoever lived on my street. On the first day, one of my regulars, we'll call him Jim, introduced himself while walking his dog. Friendly guy, very normal, very neighborly. We didn't talk long because I was unloading, but he made a good first impression. A month later, I came home from work and ran into him again. This time we actually talked about the neighborhood, the weather, work, all the usual small talk. It was a nice conversation. Until the door of the house across the street swung open and Bob walked out holding a bucket. Jim lowered his voice and said, "Watch this. He's been dumping feed corn on people's property for weeks." And sure enough, Bob walked across the street and dumped a pile of corn right on someone else's lawn. Jim shouted, not angrily, just loud enough to carry the distance, that he couldn't do that. Bob snapped around and yelled, "I can do whatever I want." Then he stomped back, grabbed another bucket, and dumped more. Jim explained that you can't feed wildlife in our area and certainly not on someone else's land, but Bob didn't care. After a bit of shouting back and forth, Bob disappeared into his house and came out with his dogs. No leashes. They ran straight toward us, barking, circling, jumping. And I've been bitten before, so that wasn't exactly fun. Bob said nothing, grabbed their collars, and dragged them away like this was totally normal behavior. After Bob left, Jim apologized and told me there was history between them. Long, messy history. He told me that Bob once got into a fight with his girlfriend and both of them pulled guns on each other. Another time, Jim was walking his dog at night and Bob came outside brandishing a handgun like he was clearing an enemy trench. According to Jim, Bob patrolled the street often, glaring at people like he was the self-appointed sheriff of the cul-de-sac. I tried to shrug it off. New place, new people. Maybe this was all exaggerated? Then a few weeks later, I heard noise outside my window and saw Bob standing at the end of my driveway, just watching. No reason, no dog, no explanation, just staring into my yard. His dog was actually wandering on my property, also unleashed, sniffing around my garage. I didn't confront him, but I did email code enforcement about the off-leash dogs. A few days later, they paid him a visit. Things went quiet for a while. I hoped it was over. Then I got a knock on my door. It was the police captain. He asked if I knew anything about what had happened between Bob and Jim earlier that day. I didn't. I'd been inside playing video games. The captain seemed tired, like he'd been dealing with them for years. When he walked back toward his car, Bob approached him, and the captain instantly put up a hand and said, "Bob, get back." That tone told me everything I needed to know. The next morning, Jim found me and filled me in. Bob had pulled a knife on him during another argument. Jim also told me that Bob had been talking trash about me because he somehow figured out I was the one who called code enforcement. So now I was on Bob's growing enemies list. Fantastic. 2 nights later is when everything finally came to a head. Jim was grilling in his backyard around 8 p.m., his dog lying beside him, everything perfectly normal. I was inside when I heard shouting again, but this time the tone was different, urgent, angry, scared. I stepped outside and saw Bob storming across Jim's yard, yelling about snitches and rats calling the city. Jim was backing away, hands raised, trying to calm him down. Then Bob bent down, grabbed a metal landscaping stake, and swung it at Jim like he meant to put him in the hospital. Jim dodged but tripped over his dog's leash and fell on his back. Bob stepped toward him, stake raised again, screaming, "Say something now!" I ran into my house, grabbed my phone, and called 911. Screamed the address, told them it was an assault in progress. At the same time, another neighbor, Rob, came outside because his dog was losing its mind, barking. The moment he saw Bob standing over Jim, he yelled, "Hey, drop it!" Bob didn't. Instead, he whipped around and threw the metal stake at Rob's head. It missed by maybe a foot. Rob didn't attack him. He didn't yell. He simply pointed at his porch camera and said loud and clear, "Bob, the whole thing's on video." And it was. The threats, the swing, the chase, the thrown stake, all of it caught perfectly on his camera. By the time the police arrived, fast because we had multiple 911 calls, everyone was outside. Bob tried lying immediately, claiming he was the victim, claiming Jim attacked first, claiming he felt threatened. Then the police watched the video. They didn't need to interview anyone after that. Bob was arrested right there in the yard for assault with a deadly weapon, trespassing, harassment, and reckless endangerment. Animal control took his dogs. Police collected statements. Jim was shaken, but okay, just bruised and furious. The rest of the neighbors gathered quietly, and almost all of them had their own stories about Bob, stories they hadn't shared until now. Turns out Bob had been terrorizing the street for years. Everyone had been waiting for the day he finally crossed a line so hard that the police had to do something. That day finally came. Bob's house has been silent ever since. Bob was out here living in a completely different reality than everyone else. Most neighbors walked dogs, grill burgers, waved politely. Bob fed wildlife illegally, let his dogs run feral, stared into yards like a horror movie extra, and whipped out weapons the second someone told him to stop acting like a menace. And our second story. They wanted to approve every IT purchase. We let them. I work in IT, and thankfully my team is awesome. We're usually trusted to handle everything related to the network and equipment without constant oversight. Our manager just wanted a reasonable explanation for expenses. If it made sense, it was approved that same day. Then, at the start of the year, upper management decided to tighten control on spending. Naturally, they set their sights on IT because apparently the department that keeps everything running must be the problem. Sure, we occasionally need to drop $6,000 or more on hardware replacements, normal wear and tear, and the occasional corporate-mandated network overhaul. We just finished a $75K rebuild thanks to one of those decisions, but we've always stayed within the budget. Still, they wanted accountability, so they implemented a new rule: no IT purchases without pre-approval, even before submitting a purchase order. Cue the malicious compliance. The notice basically said if IT needs to order it, we want to approve it first. So, fine, everything got an approval form. Need $75 worth of Post-its? Approval form. Need replacement drives for a failing server? Approval form. Need a critical part for an immediate outage response? Guess what? Approval form. It didn't matter what it was. If IT was involved, there was now paperwork. Before, it took maybe 1 to 2 weeks from request to delivery, now 4 to 5 weeks minimum. The entire process slowed to a crawl. Stations were offline waiting for parts. Equipment sat dead while forms sat in boxes. Meanwhile, production was starting to feel it. Real work delays, people unable to do their jobs, all because the hardware we needed was awaiting upper management approval. Eventually, the same managers who created this system had to scramble to mass approve dozens of pending requests once they realized how badly it was affecting operations. And there we were, just sitting back, sipping our coffee, watching them realize maybe the people who actually understand the network should have been trusted in the first place. The department that deals with the most expensive equipment spends the most money? How is this possible? Surely they must be just wasting it. And our last story. She parked her leaking car in front of my house. I used to live on a quiet little street where everyone followed the same unwritten rule. Nobody parked on the street unless they absolutely had to. The houses had long driveways, garages, and plenty of space. It kept things clean, open, and easy for mail carriers, delivery vans, and neighbors trying to pull out. Everyone respected that system. Everyone except the woman next door. She had a small silver sedan that leaked oil like it was bleeding out. Not a drip, not a spot. A full-blown Exxon Valdez situation. And instead of fixing the car or parking in her own driveway where the oil stain would actually belong, she parked directly in front of my house every single day. Sometimes even creeping far enough to partially block my mailbox. Every morning I'd walk out, see her car sitting there with its rainbow puddle spreading wide, and think, how generous of you to decorate my curb instead of your own. At first I tried being polite. I said, hey, your car's leaking pretty badly. It's blocking my mailbox sometimes. She shrugged and said, well, I don't want that mess on my side. My HOA will find me. Oh, terrific. Her solution was to ruin my curb so her HOA wouldn't get mad at her? Weeks went by, then months. The oil slick grew so large it looked like I was hosting a small inland sea. People started slowing down to stare at it. Delivery drivers stepped around it like it was toxic waste, and still she parked there every day like it was her assigned spot. One afternoon, after stepping in the puddle and nearly sliding across the asphalt, I decided I'd had enough. Not yelling, not confrontation, something better. Petty engineering. I went on Craigslist and found exactly what I needed, a $300 beater car that barely ran, held together by rust and spite. It had mismatched doors, a cracked dashboard, and an engine that coughed like a lifelong smoker. Perfect. I bought it on the spot. The minute she backed out of her favorite parking place, I rolled my new relic into position. I parked it just right, far enough from the mailbox that the carrier wouldn't have to back up, close enough that nobody else could wedge a car in there. It was locked, insured for the minimum required by law, and legally registered. More importantly, it wasn't going anywhere. The next morning, she stomped outside and stopped dead in front of the $300 masterpiece. She stared at it like it personally insulted her. She huffed. She paced. She even knocked on my door to ask if I knew whose junk heap that is. I smiled. "Oh yeah," I said. "That's mine." Her eyes narrowed. "You're blocking my parking." "You're what now?" I asked. She sputtered something about how she always parked there. "Not anymore," I replied, and closed the door. From that point on, she was forced to confront the exact problem she thought she'd offloaded onto me. Her car still leaked oil, and now she had nowhere convenient to dump it. For a week, she tried circling the street looking for a loophole, but the only spot in front of my house was taken, permanently. Eventually, she gave up, bought a giant absorbent oil pad thing, and started parking in her own driveway like a normal person. And the beater? It sat there for 2 years. I trimmed the weeds around it, washed it once or twice just to keep it from looking abandoned, and otherwise let it live its best retired life. It became part of the neighborhood ecosystem. People joked about it, kids pointed at it on walks. I didn't care. It was the best $300 I'd ever spent. When she finally moved away, I sold the car for $400 to a teenager who wanted a project. Profit. My new neighborhood has strict parking rules, only one side of the street with clear signage. Conveniently, I built my house on the side where parking is completely banned, so my curb is permanently empty. All the cars line up on the opposite side like obedient little soldiers. It turns out I'm a big fan of rules, especially when they keep people like her far, far away from my mailbox. She boldly outsourced her car leak to you like you were offering curbside oil recycling. So you answered with the pettiest solution possible, a decoy vehicle whose only job was existing. That thing didn't have to run well, look good, or even move again. Well played, OP. Very well played. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.